The 1970s had some of the coolest toys that have ever been released. If you grew up during the decade, then I'm sure you had your favorites, but there were also some weird ones. In today's video, we'll have a look back at some of the strangest toys of the 1970s. In the 1970s, girls had the opportunity to have the baby doll of their dreams. The Lazy Daisy doll, released by Ideal, sold for $5.99. If she was set down anywhere, she would instantly pass out into a deep sleep. What adds to the creepiness is that this narcoleptic doll falls over without batteries. One of the biggest television shows in the 1970s was Sanford & Son, which starred the comedian Red Fox. A talking Red Fox plush miniature was released targeted towards kids. When you pulled the string on his back, he would proclaim, "Your daddy sat on me." Nope, not creepy at all. Hugo, the Man of 1,000 Faces was released by the Kenner Toy Company in 1975. This Hugo toy set doll came with lifelike facial characteristics. The kit was complete with makeup, a wig, glasses, and various glue-on accessories. He had a soft rubber head and plastic hands, while his arms were stuffed with cotton wool. In some ways, it was like playing forensic sketch artist, and you could create your own serial killer. Long before the Cabbage Patch Kids came around in the garden, there were some other vegetables growing in the toy market. The canned beans babies had 3 varieties: navy beans, green beans, and everyone's favorite, pork and beans. So what was so appealing about these little dolls? Well, they actually had beans inside them. Milky, the marvelous milking cow from Kenner, was released in 1977. It is certainly one of the strangest toys from the Kenner toy line. She was a plastic cow that stood about 10.5 inches tall and could drink water and produce milk when one of her rubber udders was squeezed. If a child pumped her tail up and down, the cow would then drink the water from a translucent trough. Once she had her fill of H2O, Milky would raise her head, and moo indicated that she was ready for the milking. Toxic milk tablets were placed in her udder, giving the water a skim milk appearance when it came out. In 1975, Mattel released a Barbie doll spin-off named Skipper. She was designed to be a toy that would grow on little girls, literally. If you tugged on her arm, it would cause Skipper to grow in height and then develop breasts. Commercials of the time described her as curvy or being able to fit into her clothes better. Public reaction to this sudden onset of puberty was negative, and when she returned to the shelves in 1979, her upper torso was fixed in place. Pulsar and Hypnos were 2 strange figures. Pulsar had a plastic see-through chest. If the button on his back was pressed, you could see his lungs inflate and his heart beat. His official uniform was a tracksuit, I guess to promote health. I really don't know what his purpose as a hero was. I'm pretty sure that plastic chest didn't offer much protection. His nemesis was Hypnos. He had a power of mind control. If you stared at his spinning hypnotic wheel on his chest, it was all over. We have all grown to love Snoopy, but how about this version? He had an afro wig and wore a satin disco jumpsuit. Pretty groovy. If you were around in the 70s, then I'm sure you'll remember the Snoopy snow cone machine. This device was very popular, and it could make you a delicious snow cone from ice cubes. However, it was not the only one of its kind. Icebird came out in 1974 from Kenner. It required a large block of ice, and kids would have to laboriously scrape in order to get their frozen shavings. If you looked at the Sears catalogs in the 1970s, then you probably saw these. The Softina line was popular for a time, and if you really wanted to pamper her, you could purchase the giant shoe to stuff her in. It was the sneaker sleeper. Mego came out with an interesting home game in 1975 called Ball Buster. The object of the tabletop game was to bust your opponent's balls. It wasn't exactly the best name for a game, and it wasn't exactly popular either. Renko sold a doll in the 1970s that may have seemed adorable until you saw the commercial, or even worse, owned one.
Listen to Renko's Baby Laugh a Lot. You're listening to Baby Laugh a Lot. She's the funniest doll you've ever seen. Just push the button and she starts to giggle. Get Baby Laugh a Lot by Renko.
Imagine waking up to her laughing in the middle of the night. I'm sure some people still have nightmares about owning her. Seems like she paved the way for Chucky. Jaws was certainly one of the biggest movies of the 1970s. It made people terrified to go in the ocean or any kind of water for that matter. Knowing that, it doesn't seem like a game of Jaws would be something that they would come up with, but they did. In a way, it was a lot like Operation, but instead of removing items from a patient, you were actually removing items from the jaws of a shark. These items would be something like a skull or spare tire, and you were trying to get them with a long hook. If you made one wrong move, the rubber-banded jaw would snap shut and the game was over. Star Team Toys was released by Ideal in 1978, and it was meant to capitalize on the success of Star Wars. At the time, there was no shortage of imitators of the popular Star Wars franchise. But this particular one caught the attention of George Lucas and he sued for its likeness, but he lost the case in the eyes of the law. The name Star stood for space travel and reconnaissance, and it had been recycled from earlier ventures from the late 1960s. The toys do have somewhat of a likeness, but they are also sort of strange to look at now. Take a look at the Knight of Darkness. He looks like he belongs in the movie Spaceballs, and he's certainly not menacing at all. Star Team did have a Marvel comic to their credit, but they never really quite caught on like they had hoped. In 1978, Hasbro introduced a game called Great Moves, which was meant to replicate the success of Twister. One player would wear a small whiteboard, while someone else would use a pen strapped to a different part of their body. The two would then attempt to draw a picture. Some of these great moves would look like something off of a late-night Cinemax film, depending on where each part ended up. J.J. Arms was an interesting action figure that was released by Ideal in 1976. He was based on the real-life man named J. Arms. When he was 11 years old, he was playing with some railroad torpedoes and they exploded, mangling his hands. Doctors had to amputate his badly damaged hands, but that didn't stop him from achieving his dreams. He grew up and had his own detective agency where he was very successful. He also appeared on the television show Hawaii Five-0 as a sniper named Hookman. This led to his own television series with CBS. Then his action figure came out, complete with his own mobile investigation van. In 1970, Louis Marks and Company came out with a family of Skinny Bones stick people called Skinny Bones. The toys were discontinued after failing to take off, and they are highly sought after by toy collectors. The Sunshine family was probably the most 70s toy of the 1970s. The crunchy hippies Steve, Steffi, and Sweets shunned the plastic materialism of Barbie. They wore turtlenecks, sandals, and sold homemade crafts from the back of their truck. I'm sure they're all still traveling around at some flea market or Etsy store. I hope you enjoyed this little look back at some of the strangest toys of the 1970s. Can you think of any others that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching.